PCOS is the commonest endocrinopathy amongst the women of reproductive age, and this syndrome can influence in women's future well-being with late consequences. To discuss the same, the topic for today's webinar is the consequences of PCOS in elderly women, and the expert with us is Dr. Ratnabali Chakravarti. Dr. Ratnabali Chakravarti is a consultant OBGYN specialist at Columbia Asia Hospital in Kolkata, ILS Hospital, Bhagirathi Neotia Women and Child Care Center, Kolkata. Dr. Ratnabali Chakravarti is a director of MAGS Medical and Research Center. She is a former president IMS 2018-19, vice chairperson All India Women's Cells IMA, chairperson Women's Cell IMA, Bengal State Chapter, state coordinator West Bengal for Mission Pink Health Project IMA, founder secretary of Urjo NGO, work group for uplifting women above the age of 40 years. She has presented numerous research papers in national and international congresses, and she has delivered numerous lectures and orations in various congresses. Now, without further delay, I will turn the time over to our expert for the webinar. Just a reminder, if you have any question during the presentation, please type them into the question box on your screen. We will bring them up after the presentation. Over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. So good afternoon. After we are fortunate as well as unfortunate at the same moment because world is gradually diversing from us. We are not being able to meet face to face. We are not being able to talk face to face, but we are sitting together throughout India in different places and having this webinar with the help of different pharmaceutical companies like today Intas is doing it. And this is helping us a lot because we are really feeling a bit of a, depressed, anxious, like any other human being. Doctors are also, feeling the same, having the same feelings. So today when we are sitting back and again discussing about something. Hello? Hello?
Yes, this is clearly audible, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Okay. So if sometimes you cannot hear properly, you just let me know. So we are discussing about something which probably if you think clearly, we are worried about this novel coronavirus, the COVID-19. You know the statistics better than me, how many people are dying each day and we expect how might die in the next 1 month. Cardiovascular disease deaths in women, Indian women, is no less, rather much more than death due to any infectious disease. Among the non-communicable disease deaths in Indian women, cardiovascular disease is maximum. Now, why I am talking about cardiovascular disease is if we just trace back, suddenly somebody doesn't develop a disease. We know that now all disease starts whenever we are born, even some are from the fetal origin, and polycystic ovarian syndrome is one which has been probably proved to have some fetal origin as well. So this gradually, throughout our life progresses. After fourth decade, something is happening which really is bothering us now. So let's see how it happens. It's not today. For last 300 years, people are wondering about how polycystic ovary syndrome, what is polycystic ovarian syndrome, how it happens. It's a puzzle for the last 300 years. You know better than me. To me, it was in 1988 when I just became a postgraduate. And I had one such patient. You can look at this girl who's standing, never looks like a PCOS because at that point of time, we were keen to diagnose PCOS by the physical features of obesity, Hirschsprung, etc. So this girl came to me with menstrual irregularities. And when I did a sonography, I found polycystic ovaries. Both of the ovaries were involved at that point of time. And I started treating her. Some of the patients become very close to us and friendly. She became one such. And sometimes back, she presented me a picture of her with her all family, many of the family members went to the sea coast of Puri in Orissa. And they enjoyed and they took a picture and it showed to me. Why she showed it to me? Because all of these other 5 female members of the family came to me for consultation at some point of time or other. So let's see what were these problems they faced. So this is the elder sister of my patient, and she, you can see, is a typical feature of polycystic ovary, obese with a bit of a hirsutism, and she had, a cycle of 32 to 35 days. So she never came to a doctor, not knowing that this is a gynecological problem or endocrinological problem. She was concerned about her hair and, of course, a bit about her fat, nothing more. The cousin, she had, you can see, extensive hirsutism, and for which she was attending skin clinic at that point of time. Laser was not available, so lots of creams and epilations were done on this girl. Her cycle on inquiry was a bit abnormal, but she was not concerned about that. And she got married and she was not conceiving. That also, at that point of time, was not so much harassing to her. Her mother, this is the woman who opened her eyes. She was about 50 years old and she had a heart attack at about the age of 47, just after menopause. She had two children, as you can see. This is the elder daughter, younger daughter. She never had any infertility, nor did she have any menstrual abnormality. She is not fat, no hirsutism, nothing. She suddenly developed hypertension, diabetes, and had a heart attack. So later on, we found that this is what we really is looking at and trying to prevent in the Indian woman. This is the cousin sister of her mother, and she had infertility, was treated at Dr. B.N. Chakravarti Center, had IVF and conceived. She has a bit of an anovulation along with hirsutism. And her sister, she was treated by me with IUI. She got pregnant. She was also anovulatory. So looking at this picture, it always comes in our mind whether it is genetic in origin or not. So the genetic origin of PCOS is never doubted. Now we say it's a complex genetic trait disorder where the precise mode of inheritance is still unknown. However, we find it in families. So familial basis of the syndrome is established. And as we have said, mother, sister, cousins, many of them have the same thing. Now, it is a questionable point that when a syndrome which affects to 5 to 10% of women, I would say rather more than that, because we are looking at the specialist clinic in our chambers, what would be the selective advantage of having such a gene? Because it is well known that with time, when a syndrome is deleterious to someone, it is gradually being deleted from the gene pool. This is how the mutation helps us to keep our genome in a better situation. Therefore, is it the point that PCOS is advantageous for us? So looking at that point, for some species, survival of the species, the human species, probably PCOS is advantageous. 3 points have been found out till date. Number one, that retaining calories and storing adipose tissue, especially not for us, but for the families who live in a very poor situation, maybe in the forests, in islands where there is a lot of famine. During winter time, they don't get food. So for them, retaining calories and storing adipose tissue is good. They can use it at that point of time. Number two, pregnancy issue. When infertility is one of the effects of polycystic ovaries due to anovulation and repeated abortions, pregnancy issues, less mortality due to pregnancy in those people who are not getting proper medical facilities. It's not, not talking about ours. Third is, as there is more of an estrogen in the body, and you will find that it is for a prolonged period of time, they are less likely to develop osteopenia, osteoporosis. Therefore, there is less fracture, and death and mortality and morbidity due to fractures are much less. So when we look at the Androgen Excess and PCOS Society guidelines, we know that they have put hyperandrogenism as the number one, whether it is chemical or biochemical. The features of hyperandrogenism, whenever it is present in a girl or a woman, and along with oligo-ovulation or anovulation, or polycystic ovarian morphology and ultrasound scan, any two of them. Hyperandrogenism is the number one. So we are giving more and more importance to hyperandrogenism nowadays, rather than looking at the ovaries or anovulation, etc. Why? Because we know that hyperandrogenism, that is testosterone, any androgen, causes a lot of lipid profile changes and is a basic reason of cardiovascular disease. So, prevalence of cardiovascular disease, if you look at the global perspective, you just look at this red colored line. So this is the prediction of WHO. 2030, almost 23.6 million people will die from cardiovascular disease, mainly from heart disease and stroke. And prevalence rate, look at this blue colored line, among women will keep pace with those of men across all age groups. Previously, we used to think that women are having less heart attacks. Even if women are having more heart attacks, that is at the later age, but nowadays it is found that just after 40, when suddenly there is decrease in the estrogen hormone in the body, and simultaneously, though testosterone is not increasing, but there will be ratio of testosterone, androgen will be more. Hyperandrogenism will cause a lot of changes in the body, increasing the chances of cardiovascular disease. So you can see at this age, 40 to 60, almost 40% of these women are having heart attacks, cardiovascular disease rather. This is the global perspective. So prevalence of cardiovascular risk in postmenopausal women is one of the major reasons why we are looking back at PCOS with keeping in mind that if we can prevent this, that would be best, rather than doing a bypass surgery in the woman and telling them, okay, you are going to live for another 15 years. So this, all of us know that the cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in India, and 52% occurs before, means almost half of them occurs before the age of 70 years. And the rate of increased cardiovascular disease in developing countries is double than that is happening in the already developed countries. Due to various reasons I'm not going to discuss right now. And if we compare men to women, if the lifetime risk of cardiovascular disease, calculating at the age of 40 years in men, is 2 in 3, which means 66%. In women, it is no less. It is 1 in 2, which is 50%. So this happens in all: strokes, heart attack, coronary artery disease, cardiovascular disease, so on and so forth. So looking at how polycystic ovarian syndrome can cause ultimately this problem, we are going back to the basic problem, the genetic reason, and that genetic reason is causing hyperinsulinemia. We'll just have a touching on the pathways. There are 3 pathways by which hyperinsulinemia occurs. One is increased insulin secretions from the beta cells because of an exaggerated response. VNTR gene, again a genetic regulatory side problem. Then insulin resistance at the peripheral level, at which we are discussing very much today due to the binding receptor defect. Number 1. Number 2, binding autoantibodies present over there, and post-receptor defects. And tyrosine serine phosphorylation. Lastly, the insulin clearance is decreased due to decrease in the hepatic clearance and decreased hepatic degradation. So keeping all these 3 together, there is an hyperinsulinemic state. And if there is obesity, obesity causes hyperinsulinemia causes obesity, and this synergistic effect together causes the rest of the changes in the body, of which one is mainly hyperandrogenism. And we know insulin-like growth factor binding proteins decrease in this situation, sex hormone binding globulins decrease in this situation, so that the androgen increases. And insulin-like growth factors, which gets attached to these receptor genes, insulin-like growth factor receptors. So when they get attached to this, on the surface of the ovaries, there are these receptors being blocked. It becomes very difficult for the follicular cells to react in response to the FSH and LH. So the first step being PCOS. The second step is the metabolic syndrome. Since it is a flowing sort of a pathway, it's not that today it's PCOS, tomorrow it's a heart attack. But if PCOS remains untreated, gradually the metabolic syndrome features appears, And how do we know as a clinician? Any three of these 5 markers are present, we call it a metabolic syndrome. Of course, the central obesity, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, low HDL, and insulin resistance. And if you look at like this manner, and if you just put it in your statistics, you'll find that this metabolic syndrome is more than 1/3 in the Indian PCOS woman. So these are the women who are left untreated will develop cardiovascular problems. So metabolic syndrome is associated with a twofold increase in the cardiovascular disease, fivefold increase in the risk of type 2 diabetes. And alteration of lipid profiles, we have seen it in our group of patients. The 70% of the PCOS patients of different age groups taken together, there will be change in the lipid profile in a wrong way. So now suddenly if we write down that you have got PCOS in a young girl or in a aged woman, what actually we are telling her, we have to explain. Otherwise, a lot of women nowadays, girls come to us and her mother says, she has got PCOS, so I've come to you, not knowing the implication. The implication at the young age, as we all of us know, that there will be weight gain, there will be regular periods, there will be infertility, acne, hirsutism, so on and so forth. But then what is going to happen after 40 is dysfunctional uterine bleeding due to anovulation and hyperandrogenemia, might cause endometrial hyperplasia, and later on in postmenopausal endometrial carcinoma as well. There will be obesity, and in some there will be obstructive sleep apnea. You know better than me, it causes a lot of cardiovascular problems. Type 2 diabetes, dyslipidemia, hypertension, and all taken together will possibly increase the chances of cardiovascular disease. It is not stopping here. It is also implicating other members of the family. So her sisters, her daughters, and other close female relatives may also be at a risk. And she may require a lifelong therapy for this. Not only medicines, but lifestyle management and regular checkups for obesity, lipid profile changes, etc. And then we can find that her access to the healthcare coverage is limited, not in our country today, but abroad. But as we are following the Western healthcare system, gradually we will also have this, that if a woman is having polycystic ovarian syndrome untreated, her healthcare coverage will cost more to her. So this is a very nice paper which was came up in 2007, Endocrine Society, where 270 women with PCOS, 60 of them, their mothers were probable PCOS and the rest not. The conclusion they found out that the PCOS mothers of the woman with PCOS are at a higher risk of coronary artery disease events compared to non-PCOS mothers. And if myocardial infarction appears, so myocardial infarction will occur at an earlier age than expected in the PCOS mothers. So after this came into publicity, people become very much cautious about not only looking at the PCOS girls, but also taking history of their mothers. Are you diabetic? Are you hypertensive? What about your lipids? So on and so forth. This is a very nice surrogate marker, and in my clinic, I'm looking at this marker, intima media thickness. Nowadays, we can very easily do a color Doppler, and by a 3D and view and also a color Doppler, we are measuring the intima media thickness as a surrogate marker for the cardiovascular disease risk evaluation. And we are finding that there potentially increased risk in the woman with PCOS because their thickness is also found to be more in the PCOS girls and women. Calcification, coronary artery calcification can also be measured and gives a good indication of cardiovascular problem in these PCOS girls and women. We must ask about sleep apnea and sleep disorders. As we are aging and fat is being deposited in our palates, and chances of sleep apnea and sleep disorders increase with obesity, and this leads to a lot of cardiovascular problems. We must ask them about this. And it is surprising that sleep apnea, relatively uncommon in women, in a premenopausal woman, it increases in a PCOS woman after postmenopause. So what actually is happening in a PCOS girl who is turning gradually after 40 to a woman in utero, there is an uterine genetic component of IUGR, of PCOS. Small for gestational age babies develop more of a PCOS. So IUGR doesn't only means IUGR, but we should follow up the patients, telling her mother that might develop the problems. Please follow her up. In the peripubertal time, they come with the exaggerated adrenarche, which includes all of you know hirsutism, then acne, etc. And in adulthood, adolescent adulthood, polycystic ovaries, typical features. But after 40, when she comes with the aging, you won't find these features, but she will develop diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and postmenopausally, after 65, increased chances of the endometrial cancer. So if we look at this, that more of a reproductive gradually changing to a metabolic, you think of a situation when a woman coming to you at the age of 45 or 50 in your clinic, and you want to know whether she has got increased chances of metabolic syndrome and cardiovascular disease. If you can look at the features of polycystic ovaries and know that she had it, it becomes easier for you to discuss with her. But how do you know? But at the age of 50, maybe she is not menstruating. You look at the ovaries, there is no follicle. Hirsutism is increased hirsutism is a feature after menopause. So how to look? So these are the Rancho Bernardo postmenopausal PCOS criteria. When 3 of these 5 criteria are present, we can say, okay, you had polycystic ovaries in your earlier age and you are genetically predisposed to the cardiovascular problems. So you take the history of irregular menses. You can look at the hirsutism or biochemical evidence of hyperandrogenism. The SHBG will be in the lowest quintile in these patients. History of personal infertility or recurrent abortions may be present in them. Central obesity with the waist circumference more than 88 or in our country lesser, 80 centimeter. And looking at the insulin resistance, there will be features of insulin resistance defined either as a HOMA-IR value in the top quintile and so on and so forth. And if you can find out any of 3 of them, we can say that she had the features of polycystic ovarian syndrome earlier. With this background, now we have to answer some 4 specific questions. Then only we'll come to the conclusion what happens to PCOS woman after 40. So number 1, what happens to the phenotype of woman with PCOS as they age? As we discussed, this woman will not look like a typical PCOS. So androgen levels, progressive and substantial age-related decline happens with DHEAS. So if we measure it, we won't get any clue. Minimal evidence to support a decline in testosterone as well. So there is no evidence that her hyperandrogenism is decreasing. However, as estrogen is decreasing, the ratio alters. So testosterone does decline substantially from the mid-reproductive years, and women in their 40s have an approximately 50% reduction in the plasma testosterone level as they have at their 20s. But as I said, the ratio remains more in the favor of testosterone, so hyperandrogenic state in the body prevails. So here you can see the total testosterone distribution, DHEAS which is falling, pre-testosterone and androstenedione. So if the circulating hormones are meaningful indicators of biological activity, then natural menopause cannot be conceptualized as an ovarian androgen deficiency state. More so if she was hyperandrogenic earlier, PCOS, that will be carried throughout her 40 years and further 50, 60, keeping her more prone to cardiovascular disease due to hyperandrogenism. Hirsutism after menopause increases as the polycystic theca spontaneously hypersecretes androgen, and they may need continuing anti-androgen coverage. Even in the 6th decade of life, many of them will develop a lot of hirsutism. So this is a very nice study. Original article came up in the Endocrine Care. The polycystic ovary post-Rotterdam, what came up? A common age-dependent finding in ovulatory women without metabolic significance. So 262 Caucasian women with normal menses were taken, cycle being 22 to 45 days. And they were not on any medicine and was in good health. And here you can see, if you look at the polycystic ovary antral follicle count, and these black are the PCO volume with age 25 to 30, how they are decreasing 30 to 35, 36 to 40, 41 to 50. So at this age, 40 plus, you will find the volume of the ovaries as well as the antral follicle counts are as almost at the normal level. So it will be very difficult to find out at that point of time. And this testosterone level after 20 years of age gradually decreasing. However, if you take the ratio with estrogen, it remains on the higher side. You do an ultrasonography and you will find there are no follicles in the cortex. So reproductive abnormality, which was prevailing in the PCOS gradually after birth, puberty, menopause, it gradually changes to a metabolic abnormality. And the importance of diagnosing this hyperandrogenemia in PCOS is, just look at these 2 points. The feature that is best associated with metabolic abnormality is insulin resistance and cardiovascular disease risk. You look at this. So glucose tolerance, if you look, this is the baseline and this is the follow-up. In PCOS and in controls, the PCOS are on metformin is a better control. So this level decreases. That
Hello. Hello. Hello.
খাবো তো কতদূর অবধিও পেয়েছিল সেটাই তো জানি না, কতক্ষণ বন্ধ আছে।
Ma'am, please share your presentation again from the last slide that you started.
Which one was the last slide? This one?
Just share it again, I will tell you.
Which one is the last slide? Because I was talking, I haven't seen this.
Can you please share it again?
Start from the beginning?
No. From just slide share. You have to do the slide share.
I don't understand.
Screen share. You have to go to the green button, screen share, and you have to share the slide.
Say the slide. Slide के बाद दीते हैं
क्या?
Madam Dipanshu is there. He can just share the slides. Slide 45. Full screen and then change the side.
Hello.
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 Ma'am, select slide number 45 and start.
45, 45.
45. एक मिनट ना এটা তো দেখে নিচ্ছি আমি দাঁড়া এটা স্লাইডিং দেখে নিচ্ছি
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. So can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So a policy, if you look at this graph, polycystic ovarian syndrome girls from the age of 20 years have got elevated LDL level. And that continues throughout her life, even at 45, 50, etc. But if you look at the control, then at their early age, they have got normal lipid profile. After the age of 40, gradually it increases and crosses after the age of 45, 50, maybe the same. But what happens is, due to this increased high LDL level in the early age, the atherosclerotic changes in the vessels starts taking place in the PCOS woman much earlier. So they are more prone to have cardiovascular disease at an early age, as I have already shown you a trial report where it was shown that a PCOS woman, PCOS mothers or PCOS girls get myocardial infarction at much earlier age than in the control people, control women. So we did a study over regarding this coronary heart disease risk and lipid profile in Indian women. We did it in our clinic, and we found that all this in the PCOS, we regularly did this lipid profiles, and you can see that lipoprotein A level was significantly different in those PCOS and normal controls, and they also have increased levels of total cholesterol, the low density, very low density lipoproteins, and others control in the PCOS group as well as in the non-PCOS group. We also measured vitamin D levels in this, and it's correlating with the general finding that vitamin D deficiency common in the woman with polycystic ovarian syndrome to the range of 65 to 70, 85%. With our science college, science university, we did this trial of genetic polymorphism in the vitamin D receptor, and we found it present in the polycystic ovarian syndrome woman. And this is a very interesting slide where it's a normal glucose tolerance, a woman having normal glucose tolerance, impaired glucose tolerance, and diabetes mellitus, and how they changes in PCOS if they remain untreated. Then after a certain point of time, you will find that almost 45% of them are turning to the normal glucose tolerance, turning to impaired glucose tolerance or diabetes. Impaired glucose tolerance, almost 17% turns to diabetes. And if they are undergoing treatment, then they can turn to normal glucose tolerance, having normal glucose tolerance test reports. So the summary is with age and PCOS phenotype, the reproductive abnormalities becomes less, hyperandrogenemia remains, oligomenorrhea you will not find, the size of the polycystic ovary and morphology changes, metabolic abnormalities, the question is, do they plateau? No. The second question remains, is there prolonged ovarian function in the woman with PCOS? Because if there is early menopause, we know there is increased chances of cardiovascular disease and osteoporosis. So if there is late menopause, will they be in an improved situation? And what about breast cancer risk? So here are the AMH plasma levels in controls. This is in PCOS, this is in functional hyperandrogenism and POF. Premature ovarian failure, you will find AMH very less. This is the control, and in PCOS it is much higher. And this was a very nice report came up in the human reproduction, the relationship between ovarian volume, antral follicle counts, AMH serum concentration in PCOS status, and age in 57 pre and postmenopausal PCOS patient and 64 pre and postmenopausal controls. So if you look at this graph, PCOS is a box, open boxes and black boxes are the controls. You'll find that the ovarian reserve remains much more in the PCOS woman. It doesn't mean that she can get pregnant at 60 years, but it remains quite for some time. So if we compare the AMH level, this is the normal, this is ovulatory PCO and ovulatory PCO, AMH level remains much higher for a longer period of time. So this report came up, is polycystic ovary syndrome an exception for reproductive aging? Conclusion was the lifespan, reproductive lifespan of PCOS woman is average 2 years more than in a normally ovulating woman. So PCOS, menopause and osteoporosis, the study report shows that there is less likely to have osteopenia and osteoporosis in polycystic ovary syndrome cases. And comparison, though there are not so many trial reports, a comparison of bone density and fracture rates among normal postmenopausal and postmenopausal PCOS will be done in future, ultimately to find out whether it has got good effects on the osteoporosis prevention. And summary is evidence of increased ovarian reserve in women with PCOS compared to age-matched control, but little data to find out their effect. Third question was, is there a menopausal PCOS phenotype? So this is a very good report where PCOS and non-PCOS, we look at the phenotype, menstrual irregularity much more in PCOS, biochemical hyperandrogenism much more, infertility miscarriage more, central obesity more, and biochemical insulin resistance more. So if we measure it even at the age of 40 years, they remain much more than the others. And if we look at the endpoint, that is cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease, PCOS, only age if you take, if it is 1.06 odds ratio, PCOS it is much more increased, 1.36. Coronary heart disease much more increased, 1.36, which means that they do really have problem in the PCOS woman in the later life of the cardiovascular disease. This is a very nice trial, wise study, woman ischemic syndrome evaluation. Here, postmenopausal woman with history of irregular menses, which may be a post-PCOS woman, and elevated androgen measurements are at higher risk for worsening cardiovascular event-free survival. So one episode of cardiovascular event and the second episode will be much closer, will be much severe, and chances of succumbing in the second one is more in the PCOS woman than in the non-PCOS. So summary is there is a plethora of PCOS menopausal phenotypes. None of these have been validated in the prospective studies, and there are no assays to find out the menopausal testosterone levels. Last question is, where should the research go in this area? This is most important because then only will come to the conclusion that whether PCOS has got advantage in our life or disadvantage. So two types of trials are going on. One long-term multi-center cohort studies are going on. One of them are nurses health study. One is SWAN, that is study of women's health across nation study, to establish the menopausal phenotype, cardiovascular events, cancers, and other mortality and morbidity. The second agenda was to find out the genome. So utilize genome-wide association studies to find out, identify the new genes or pathways so that we can do something for them. These are called GWA, study of the genes related to the age of menopause and PCOS genes. So already some genes have been isolated. So steroid hormone metabolism and biosynthetic genes, IGF pathway gene, TGA beta gene, obesity and obesity related gene, and polycystic ovarian NBN gene. We never knew much about it, but now it is gradually coming into light. NBRIN or NBN gene. It's a protein associated with the repair of double-strand breaks, which pose serious damage to a genome, has a 754 amino acid protein and located in chromosome 8. And this might be the answer to our polycystic ovarian syndrome, answer to the metabolic age syndrome and cardiovascular disease in Indian postmenopausal women. Thank you very much. We acknowledge all those who supported the study reports. And these are the references. Thank you very much for your kind hearing, patient hearing. If there is any question, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for this insightful lecture. There are a few questions for you. I will take one by one.
Can I see the questions on the screen?
No, madam, you cannot see. I can only see it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ambuja Choranur is asking, is it necessary to get intima media thickening as a screening for CVD risk every year?
I could not get properly. Can you just repeat?
Dr. Ambuja Choranur is asking, is it necessary to get intima media thickening as a screening for CVD risk every year?
Thank you, Ambuja. Thank you so much. Nice to talk to you. Till today, it is not included in our screening tests or regular clinical tests, but trials are going on because this is a non-invasive method and will not cost much because we don't have so many, test reports to confirm a PCOS woman who are going to have more chances of cardiovascular disease. Probably this will be a surrogate marker. So a few reports have come up, and I'm doing it also at my clinic. And maybe in future we can include it after it is being confirmed that okay, if I look at it, we'll find the increased chance, and we can tell the woman. And of course, there is one recommendation that if you find out that this girl or woman is going to have more chances of metabolic age syndrome, you have seen those 5 features of which 3 must be present there, we must refer them to a medical specialist, a cardiologist or a medical specialist who can take care of the lipid profile changes and other things. So this may be another marker later on we can find out.
Second question is from Dr. Ashwini. She's asking, what are the risks of cancer in women with PCOS and how should these women be screened?
So one is confirmed, that is endometrial cancer because of prolonged anovulation and hyperandrogenemia. So in this woman, there is chances of endometrial hyperplasia and endometrial cancer. So for them, if we find a woman had PCOS and had very regular and prolonged bleeding premenopausally, not perimenopausally, but premenopausally, then we should follow her up yearly, at least yearly, postmenopausally, to find out the thickness of the endometrium. If it crosses 5, then we should be careful and evaluate the case. Hysteroscopy may be needed in those cases. And statistics shows that if these women, they have got metabolic problems, they will have hypertension, they will have diabetes, obesity, and all these are causing the dangerous triad of causing endometrial cancer. Regarding breast cancer, as you have seen that they have prolonging their reproductive life by 2 more years, exposed to more amount of estrogen. If we check that probably estrogen might cause those genetically predisposed women to cancer breast, then maybe there is a chance, though there is no trial to prove so.
Next question is from Dr. Gayatri. She is asking, what is the prognosis following bariatric surgery in PCOS patients?
There is excellent prognosis. In fact, the PCOS women who are infertile and have got excessive weight, 30 kgs over her own standard weight, we are prescribing them bariatric surgery, and after they do bariatric surgery, the treatment of infertility becomes easier. They might conceive also, and they carry the pregnancy very well. And definitely their future in future they're having chances of cardiovascular disease decreases, type 2 diabetes decreases. However, the problems due to bariatric, those are similar in all cases, whether male or female, age less or more, PCOS or non-PCOS. But definitely they get good results from this bariatric surgery.
Next question is on the similar line from Dr. Akash. He is asking, what is the prognosis following electrocautery?
Electrocautery. Of what?
Ovaries.
Ovaries. We do not recommend any, electrical cautery or whatever of the ovaries nowadays, because that destroys the ovarian stroma. And we know that if it is due to infertility and ovulation, definitely we don't want it. If you say that it is due to we want to destroy the ovarian stroma so that there is less testosterone, no, there is no such reports or no such recommendation of doing any electrical surgery on the ovaries.
Next question is from again Dr. Ashwini. She's asking, is drug therapy appropriate for long-term management of women with PCOS?
Sorry, what therapy?
Is drug therapy, pharmacological therapy, drug therapy appropriate for long-term management of PCOS patients?
See, Rashmi, what we were discussing till now, it has got a genetic background. Point number one. So we cannot change genes, and there will always be a tendency of hyperandrogenemia and due to hyperinsulinemia and other reasons. So by lifestyle management, if we can control this, that is the best option. For example, if you look at your counterparts staying in a poorer situation in the villages, having less calorie, more exercise, less stress, they are not having typical phenotypes of PCOS. Though we know that diabetic gene is present in majority of the Indian population, even then. So if lifestyle management is suffice, fine. But if she's presenting to our clinic, there are two separate issues you have to understand. One issue is general public. So through government, if it is, we are promoting lifestyle management, exercise, diet, less stress, and so on and so forth. So that will take care as a whole of the genetic problem throughout our population. But if we are taking the women who are coming to our chambers with specific problems where already the phenotype has developed, so they are either coming with menstrual irregularities or with coming with infertility or later on with endometrial hyperplasia and cancer, they have to be treated. They need drug at that point of time. And if we find there is hyperinsulinemia, metformin is the drug of choice and we should be giving them.
Next question is from Dr. Jignesh Shah. He's asking, breast cancer in PCOS patient, any protocols for screening?
Jignesh, we have already discussed. There are certain speculations that due to overexposure for a longer period of time to the estrogen, there may be increased chances of breast cancer, but that has not been substantiated. So no different protocol as we have in our menopausal society protocol, the similar you have to follow.
Next question is from Dr. Jyoti Shah. She's asking, is there any correlation of PCOS with premature menopause?
Not at all. Rather, we have shown in a slide that 2 more years you will gain if you have got PCOS. The AMH level will be higher, the ovarian volume, the antral follicle count, which will be more if you compare with the non-PCOS counterpart for 2 more years. It's not premature, rather I would say post-mature.
The next question is from Dr. Niranjan Parikh. He's asking, does metformin help decreasing the risk in PCOS women during adolescence?
Definitely. But you have to look at what we are looking at. If it is a typical, you will find there are different spectrum of polycystic ovarian syndrome phenotypes are different. Some are coming with nothing, only menstrual irregularity. For them, prevention of developing other phenotype changes, along with just making the cycle regular, is one situation. Some will come with a bit of changed menstrual irregularity, but a lot of body changes, obesity, hirsutism, etc., and they have hyperinsulinemia. They need, along with lifestyle management, metformin. So we have to segregate the patients like that and then treat them. And in these women, if they do a lot of lifestyle management, after some time you can stop metformin. But in majority, they are not being able to. So you have to encourage them with the lifestyle management and continue with the metformin as long as they need it.
Next question is from Dr. Seema Pasricha. She's asking, how do the lean young PCOS fare post-menopausally? How do lean young PCOS women fare post-menopausally?
See, there are no different reports where lean and obese post-menopausal women cardiovascular problems have been compared. However, if you look at this, these are the difficult cases to treat. There are may not be features of peripheral resistance to insulin. Therefore, in many cases, only lifestyle management and metformin will not help. But these are, many of them are, you will find they have got intrauterine growth restriction, and their cardiovascular problem due to growth restrictions will be more rather than due to metabolic causes. So in this situation, a woman coming to you postmenopausally, and you think that probably she had PCOS, do evaluate for the cardiovascular problems and send to a good cardiologist with writing down the points that probably she was PCOS, now postmenopausal. She was a lean PCOS. If there is any history of IUGR, you'll write down. Otherwise, for cardiac evaluation, and please send to a cardiologist because they are at more chance of having coronary heart disease.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Seema is again asking, how long can we give metformin in young PCOS women?
There is no restriction, as I have told. As long as the insulin resistance prevails, you can go on giving it. But please make them change their lifestyle, because diet and exercise, these are the two major pillars on which the treatment stands. But to start with, if you do not give metformin and help them reduce the peripheral resistance of insulin, they won't get result and they will stop doing the treatment. Therefore, you may continue as long as you want. There is no harm.
Next question is from Dr. Prachi. She's asking, do you regularly do serum insulin levels to diagnose PCOS? Does it change treatment?
Some 3 years back, we used to do regular, and it was just showing that the girl or the woman that you are improving. But due to the fact that it's difficult to measure, it's costly, and the standardized kit is not available, now the recommendation from the PCOS Society internationally, it is said that you need not do the insulin level measurement. It's only look at the hyperandrogenic in the features, either biochemical or clinical, and if it is present, then treat them accordingly as if she is hyperinsulinemic. You can look at the features of hyperinsulinemia clinically at the acanthosis nigricans, at the skin tags, at seborrheic dermatitis, so on and so forth, and therefore there isn't a problem in treating them.
Next question is from Dr. Reva Singhania. She's asking, can PCOS delay menarche?
Pardon, can PCOS delay menarche?
Delay menarche, yeah. Can PCOS delay menarche?
Very lovely question, lovely question. We do get patients coming with primary amenorrhea, and you will find that they are quite obese. They are a bit of obese in type, but they usually do not have the features of hyperandrogenism, not Hirschautism or things like that are not present. They're usually obese, they're primary amenorrheic, and you look at the ovaries, you'll find multiple follicles. Usually the report comes at multiple follicular ovaries. Actually, they are going to develop PCOS, and that is dealing menarche. So nothing else, it's not any other factor, but due to hyperinsulinemic state, she is not ovulating. So these are the cases where very easily they can be reversed, coming at this very, very early age.
Next question is from Dr. Sudha Sharma. She is asking, how does a thin PCO girl treatment differ from obese PCO girl?
Sudha, the point is, when a thin PCO girl comes, which are very, very less in number, if you get features of hyperinsulinemia, apart from obesity, there are other features as well, you'll get much less in these girls. If they are not present, then don't treat with metformin, treat it by the other methods. But if you get some of the features, you have to be very careful looking at the features. We got in one patient only acanthosis nigricans in the axilla and in the thighs, below the breasts. Usually they're present in the obese. But if you get a thin, you please look for this. And if they are present, treat with metformin, no harm. But if it is not present, then you need not give metformin in these patients.
Next question is from Dr. Sonal Batla. She's asking, prolonged OCP administration, does it help in reduction of central obesity in such women?
Central obesity in PCOS woman is due to hyperinsulinemia and hyperandrogenism. So hyperinsulinemia treatment has to be done, whether if you give oral pills or not. Oral pills will definitely decrease the hyperandrogenemia. So central obesity, especially the androgenic fat distribution in the upper abdomen will decrease. But to decrease the total fat distribution, especially in the in our viscera, the visceral fat, to decrease that, we need to give treat the hyperinsulinemia with metformin. Only OCT will not help.
Next question is from Dr. Vijay. He's asking what is the role of myoinositol and D-chiroinositol in management of PCOS?
See, head-to-head study, a few had been done and shown that myoinositol gives good results. Our gut feeling with our patients with metformin only and metformin with myoinositol is a bit better with myoinositol. I have not given only myoinositol to any patient. Always we give with the metformin, and we find that it is faring a bit more better if we add myoinositol to this metformin, whether we are giving OCT or not.
Next question is from Dr. Jyoti Shah. She's asking, logically, more OR exhausted every month from polycystic ovaries than normal ovaries. Then will not this lead to ovarian exhaustion early?
No, this is again a very nice question. Actually, see, 30 to 40 primary primordial follicles, they start growing, of which one usually ovulates. In case of PCOS, none of them ovulates. And both FSH LH level gradually increases. FSH not to that extent, but LH to a huge extent. And many more number of follicles will be recruited. They will not go up to after the 10 millimeter size, but they will be recruited. But that doesn't mean that they are getting exhausted, because these are the eggs which were destined to start growing from the primordial phase into the primary oocytes and secondary oocytes later on in this very particular cycle. But normally they were getting atrophic. In PCOS, you can see them because they're growing up to 10 mm and then they are atrophying. So you're finding, okay, there are so many lot of follicles. But actually, if they were not seen as if they're in a normal non-PCOS moment, they were going to get atrophy. They were destined to do so. They were programmed cell death in each month of the number of follicles that is destined.
Last question from Dr. Sonal Batla. How do you define and assess insulin resistance?
See, assessment of insulin, now we look at the clinical features as we have already discussed on it. Then you can do a oral glucose tolerance test, which is a must in these cases. This HOMA-IR, which was done earlier, we don't do nowadays and is not recommended also clinically to be done in each case. Insulin measurement is also not recommended to be done in each case. Earlier, we were doing fasting insulin, fasting glucose. We were dividing them and finding out the ratio. These are not at all needed. Nowadays, it is the clinical features and with the history, as we have already shown. If these features of insulin resistance is present, you can, as a clinician, stamp that this is a case of insulin resistance. If you want to know more, you have to send to endocrinologist, where HOMA-IR and others will be done with them.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for sharing your expertise on this very important topic in a very crisp way. I'm sure audience has gained a lot of valuable insights. I would like to thank all our participants for taking their time out for this webinar. I would like to thank IMS President Dr. Jignesh Shah and Intas Women Health BU Head Mr. DP Satpathy sir and our division head Mr. Manish Shah sir for making this event possible. Have a nice day. Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.